So, in case you hadn't noticed, Disney's having a rough year. You know, for a company of its stature. It's still one of the 5 or 6 companies that own everything, so things can't be going that badly, but yeah. No movies over $1 billion, a few serious bombs, and a chronic cooling of critical reception. One of the latest items, and maybe one of the biggest disappointments in this L year, was The Marvels, which divided critics, though not to the extent of some recent MCU fare, and seemed not to interest the wider public too much either. Its box office run is looking rather shabby. It's far from the only recent release to wildly disappoint. Napoleon and Killers of the Flower Moon are 2 big ones, and apparently Aquaman 2 is tracking to open lower still, but people want answers. Shareholders want answers. Luckily, Disney CEO Bob Iger is here to give them. Wait, what's that? A title card? Oh no! Part 1. Too few cooks. The other day, at the recent Deal Book Summit, which you may recognize as the place Elon Musk had his latest little meltdown.
Don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No. Go f*** yourself.
Iger blamed the underperformance of The Marvels on the fact that it was shot during the height of the pandemic, and thus, that fewer executives could be present to oversee things during production. Too few cooks in the kitchen, apparently. That's the reason. Now, if you're thinking, hey, didn't like every Phase 4 and 5 Marvel project shoot during the pandemic, even the ones which did well critically and commercially, then you'd be right. And Iger's comment might well seem a little strange to you. That strangeness might be exacerbated were you to remember the much publicized moment a month or so back, where Marvel seemed to realize quite publicly that their executive-driven fix-it-in-post mentality had become a problem. But thinking back to a few other recent news items might clear things up. You might recall that Variety's big Crisis at Marvel report, citing an undisclosed insider source, mentioned director Nia DaCosta had moved away during the post-production of The Marvels, and positioned it as this big mysterious thing, like, wow, uncommitted much? Thing is, DaCosta's camp has since clarified that she was still involved with the process despite her move, that her commitments in London were known and approved of well in advance by Marvel, and that the only reason the move ended up taking her away from the project with months left to go was Marvel's repeated delaying of and fiddling with the piece. All details which a source familiar with the production would surely have known. Strangely enough though, leakers hellbent on calling DaCosta's dedication into question continued to spill their beans. The story soon broke that she didn't even attend the Marvel's cast and crew screening. Wow, what a flake. Seems like she didn't care at all, probably just half-assed the whole thing, I guess. Well, no, hold on. DaCosta's camp also clarified this. She didn't attend because she wasn't invited, actually. See, it was her birthday too. Only on inviting colleagues to her party and being told, oh, I can't come, I'm going to the screening, did she even learn it was taking place. Which is strange, right? Typically, you would invite the director, you know, unless you were already in the process of scapegoating her for a film projected to sell poorly. That's the accusation many are making, and it is a hefty one, but if the shoe fits... With this context in mind, along with the fact that plenty of projects shot mid-pandemic did do fine, don't Iger's comments feel less like a revisionist blaming of COVID and more like the latest phase of an extended DaCosta scapegoating? Think about it. Oh yeah, the pandemic meant we couldn't get there to keep an eye on things, implies things needed looking after, that the Marvels underperformed because DaCosta and co messed things up on the shoot. That's part of what's going on here then, but it's not the whole thing. Since, yeah, it is clear that the Marvel's bombing is due more to audience opinions on the MCU of 2023 and the wider industry context, more on that later, than anything DaCosta did or didn't do. Ticket pre-sales were way down. The historic bombing wasn't just caused by a fall-off, but a lack of people coming to begin with. This is all a little thin, a little easy to see through, isn't it? Well, yeah, it seems Iger realized this too, because that's not all he said. Part 2. The message. Per Deadline, Iger also acknowledged that messaging in recent years has turned off a certain audience segment. Entertain first, not messages, Iger said, adding that positive messages for the world sometimes overwhelmed storytelling. It's true that this quote wasn't directly about the Marvels, or the MCU for that matter, but it came during a speech which functioned partially as a Marvel's box office autopsy, as a what's been holding back our box offices, as a why has Disney had a rough year. This is how that soundbite's being reported, and Iger's been in the business long enough to know how a statement like this was going to be taken. So technically it's not about the Marvels, but pragmatically it kind of is. Leaving aside for a moment the fact that the only two full, no asterisk necessary box office smashes this year, Barbie and Oppenheimer, were some of the year's most political, most messagey pieces, what was the message in the Marvels? For real, what was it? Drop it down below. I'd love to hear it, because to be honest, I got nothing. There are a few political ideas half buried throughout. The idea that destroying the supreme intelligence didn't fix Kree society but created a far worse power vacuum is interesting, but that one-sentence summary is pretty much the full extent of it. It's primarily a detail used to establish Carol's personal arc in the film. So what about the rest of the year? Stacey Henley writes for thegamer.com, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which has no woke messaging whatsoever and is led by a white man, also flopped, failing to clear $500 million. Look, hey, gun to my head, I think you could make a kinda progressive reading of the film. Scott's somewhat skeletal arc in it has to do with learning that the possibility of unintended consequences doesn't mean one shouldn't act, and might even mean the opposite. His daughter's, I guess, left-coded off-screen protesting plays a part in this, and so bada bing bada boom, there's something. But you do have to make that reading. You have to go to the film looking for moralizing, progressivism to come away with even that. So yeah, I do agree with Henley, because I certainly would not call that woke messaging. Other than this, there's a one-line gag about socialist ants and 3 semi-prominent female characters, both of which the usual suspects focused on. But I guarantee you, not a single viewer walked out of the theater, reflected on the film, and came away thinking Quantumania's big point was that we as a society should be more like giant futuristic ants. As we touched on a few months back, Guardians Volume 3 is the most, I guess, messagey film Marvel released this year, and it was also the most successful. But all these are less political, less moralizing than, say, the Iron Man or Captain America trilogies, and yet this is supposed to be the year in which the messaging got too heavy. Here's a question: what messaging? No, sorry, that is fake naivete on my part, so I get to do a super indignant line read. Yeah, I know what the messaging being referred to is, and most of you probably do too. Women of color. Iger can refer to putting message above entertainment and be understood, because we all know by now that the message doesn't mean something has a message, just that it has points upon which the accusation of messaging can be projected, i.e. the main characters are women, so a stupid person could see that and argue that the Marvels wants to replace men. Is feminism gone mad? And around these parts, we have a name for that. No, the only real message is the implicit message of inclusion given by the film's casting and its dramatis personae, one you can't get rid of without flipping back to Hollywood's default white male focus, and if this is a message, this is too. So this is a platitude. As Henley continues, Bob Iger might think entertainment needs to outweigh messages, but the biggest message Disney has been sending audiences is wait until it's on Disney+. But it's not quite an empty platitude, is it? No, Iger seems to have dialed into a specific culture war code. Not just a message, but the message, imagined, decried, and elbowed into popular discourse by right-wing rhetoricians like Nerdrotic or my favorite channel, The Critical Drinker. Let's not forget, and I'm quoting from the blog worldofreal.com, last month Iger had hinted that he wanted to quiet things down at Disney after years of culture wars, which seemed to be in reference to the company having been accused many times of promoting a woke agenda in their movies. Now, you have to imagine Iger has seen this year's slate of Marvel films, knows none put the message above entertainment. Matthew Baloney's recent article for Puck, Iger's Disney De-Wokening, begins with the following summary. The go woke, go broke narrative persists, despite its origins as social media and Fox News noise. And now it's become clear that Disney CEO Bob Iger himself believes that whether it's BS or not, the company's progressive, quote, messaging has become a problem. So yeah, you have to imagine he doesn't believe this himself, is simply seeing an opportunity here and piggybacking on the culture warring of these online grifters and useful idiots, is using that nebulous message as a secondary, longer-term scapegoat, because this, added together with that too few cooks DaCosta scapegoating above, means it's not Bob's fault, nor the fault of the executive class. This year, Disney has repeatedly struggled to profit from their film releases, and whatever Bob says, the lion's share of the blame here comes down to those atop the hierarchy. If they wanted box office success, they needed to have integrated Disney Plus in a way that didn't straightforwardly cannibalize their own audience. They needed to settle with the unions, so these mega expensive projects didn't flop out of the production pipe with no fanfare and no publicity. They needed to figure out a better production strategy than letting creators cook, then throwing them out of the kitchen halfway through. They needed to figure out how to re-establish the perception of their franchise's quality. They needed to keep those budgets from ballooning in the way that they have. It wouldn't be so hard for these films to make their money back if they didn't all cost all the money ever printed. That's what they needed to do, and instead they've chosen to blame a director and blame the message. Now, to be fair, Iger did acknowledge Disney Plus made things tricky, but to be even fairer, he frames Disney Plus's impact as simply having raised the quality bar for successful films. So the blame is still being placed at people like DaCosta's feet. To be fair, again, he did direct some of the blame to the studio bigwigs for going all in on sequels and franchises, but to be even fairer again, he followed that up by walking it back almost entirely. And I can't even think that this is an attempt to win back people who are whining about messages, because that's not how anti-fandom works. You can't appease them, it's a no-win game. Even if you admit to their made-up charges, that apology won't rebuild their excitement. It'll be taken as proof of Disney's weakness. It's already happening. Just look at this article from bounding into Christian fascism. Sorry, bounding into comics. No, Bob is just trying to pass the buck. Part 3. The moral. So, Bob Iger's chatting shit. It'd be nice if the moral of this video could be Bob Iger's chatting shit and it's obvious it won't do him any good, but no, it will. It doesn't matter how empty these words are, how transparently contradictory this Marvel's mea culpa actually is, because he's giving a mea culpa. He's performing a corporate ritual to restore faith in his continued commercial viability and the brand's continued commercial viability until he makes good on his 2026 exit plan. By and large, shareholders won't have seen all these projects, won't be up to date on the truth of DaCosta's post-production responsibilities, so they'll accept whatever Iger throws out. But we don't have to. We can take this as what it is, the latest expression of the same impulse that led Iger to oppose SAG-AFTRA so obstinately, an executive siding with capital above employees and above art. It's what they do. Companies like Disney like to have it both ways. When they're getting good PR for putting out media seen as progressive, whether that progressivism is superficial or not, they love it, they're proud to do it. The moment things start to slow, the moment walking all that back looks to confer even a slight tactical benefit, we get comments like this, and people get thrown under the bus. I'm sure some Disney higher-ups were thrilled by the raft of good PR that came alongside DaCosta's attachment to the Marvels, but that didn't stop them from scapegoating her the moment the option appeared. Later in his article, observing this shift in the ostensibly progressive CEO's signaling, Baloney suggests there's no way the Iger of 2023 would allow the Lightyear kiss. The article also calls out Iger's revisionist history. Iger claims the messaging got worse while he was gone, i.e. throughout 2022, but as Baloney writes, movies like Lightyear and Strange World and The Little Mermaid were greenlit either before Iger stepped down as CEO in early 2020 or while he was supposedly in charge of all creative output as executive chairman until the end of 2021. Iger's progressive image has served him well in the past, but make no mistake, it is just that, an image. The mistake some make upon seeing things like this is to conclude all progressive aesthetics, superficial or heartfelt, in Disney-released projects are as thin and performative as the actions of their executives, but that is a mistake. People like Iger didn't write or shoot these films. The people they hire, the people they in some cases exploit, create the art. And most writers, most directors, most artists aren't just in it for the money. If you think creatives would be happy spending maybe years on a project and not trying their best to make it good, make it authentic, you probably don't know many creatives. The fact that sometimes their efforts, their sentiments, any fruits of their labor that appear or can be taken as remotely progressive, political, or critical of any establishment whatsoever, are then used or discarded by upper management in corporate PR games, held up as either praiseworthy or contemptible depending on how the quarter's going, only shows how embattled progressivism and inclusive sentiment still is, always will be, in a system that incentivizes big number above all else. There, that feels like a natural stopping point. Capitalism bad, who'da thunk it? Hope you enjoyed the video though. If you'd like to support a video essayist who doesn't plagiarize, apparently we're a rare breed these days, please do consider liking, subscribing, sharing, checking out the Patreon link below, any of that stuff. Otherwise, have a nice day, and I'll see you soon. And to all my current backers on Patreon and YouTube, you're the best, and I hope you have a really nice day.